Hey guys, welcome to the Smart Venture Podcast. In each episode, we're going to have conversations with some of the top investors, superstar founders, as well as well-known tech company executives in Silicon Valley. We'll have a coffee chat with them to learn their way of thinking and actionable tips on how they build or invest in a successful company. Before we start our show today, I want to make sure the listener, aka you, understand that everything a person say on the podcast only reflects hers or his own opinion, not the show or the company they work at. Our guest today is a Senior Vice President of Marketing at Yelp. Prior to Yelp, he was the SVP of Global Marketing at Eventbrite, where he led marketers in 8 different countries. And before that, he led many marketing teams in various sectors such as real estate, banking, and healthcare. His name is Dan Kimball. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thank you for having me.
By the way, we were talking about the hat before we started the show. I love the hat. It's very marketing driven.
It is. It is. You gotta be representing as a marketer. And you also have to be a poser. I don't even surf, but I just love the hat. And this is it was just a really cool surf shop in Encinitas that reminds me of my time there. So
yeah, I love the vibe. To start off the show, I'd love to chat about your childhood experiences. Your mom is a very artistic person. Your dad is very logical driven. You grew up in Boston. Tell us more about how did the childhood experiences shape you into who you are today?
Yeah. So you obviously have listened to some past podcasts where I talked about my mom being an artist and my dad being kind of a logical mechanic, business owner. I definitely always loved art, whether it was sketching or painting or printmaking, you name it, I was doing it. And my favorite thing to do was trying to capture a face or a human moment of expression, if you will, as accurately as I could. I mean, I would just sit there and just like sketch someone's face until I'd show it to someone. I'd be like, do you recognize that person? But on the other side, and that's a very technical skill. Mm-hmm. But on the other side, I also like doodling. I'm just like, my mind still wanders. I will doodle on conference calls, and it just kind of keeps me engaged while my mind kind of goes into a different direction. But honestly, even my doodles need some symmetry. And I'm always trying to make sense, even if it's abstract. So I guess my brain, while it's creative, is always searching for order. And I'm driven by that. There's a constant need to make sense of white space and ambiguous situations. And ultimately, my job has taken that form too. I mean, when you become a leader, whether you're at a startup or a big company, your job, in my mind at least, is to help other people through pretty shapeless, ambiguous white space situations and help them make sense of it. And, there's so many examples of that at technology companies where we're constantly innovating and looking for product market fit and trying to figure out who our customers are. And there's an art to that. But, as you start to see patterns, you build systems around that. And, whether it's the art or science in my childhood, it's all kind of come together in really what I love about not just marketing, but in, working in business.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you that business is a form of art. It requires you to be creative in strategies and being analytical to make decisions. Speaking of being good in business and advancing your career, what is a skill that you're constantly trying to get better at?
Yeah. So that journey never stops. Even after a couple of decades of doing this, I still feel pretty deficient in many areas. But I hire I hire really good people. And, I'd say the one thing that I'm probably focused on right now is really about telling a good story, building a brand, changing consumer minds. It sounds easier. Maybe it doesn't sound easy, but it sounds easy at the outset. But mental models, consumer mental models are really difficult to shift. Once a consumer has made their mind up about how they spend their days or what they think about a brand, that's really hard to change. So what I'm really keen to get better at right now is finding ways to work with my product counterparts to adopt customer experiences to suit the needs of consumers. The best brands do this exceptionally well, whether it's Apple or Spotify or Airbnb. They just, it wasn't easy, but they built a seamless experience, no matter You could be talking to a genius at a Genius Bar, or you call customer service or at Apple, or you open that box, and it just whoosh, and you got that new iPhone and it smells great. It's just, that is every bit of that experience is perfectly designed and captured, but it's not by mistake, right? That's a very deliberate thing.
Yeah.
So we're actually working really hard at Yelp on our first big consumer brand initiative right now, to launch this summer. And I'm just excited to get in the weeds on brand positioning and storytelling and really integrated campaign design, which isn't a muscle that I think we have, or it's been many years since we've done it. So it's definitely a skill that I'm, relearning, because I haven't done it in a few years as well.
When you mentioned about Wish, it reminded me of David Dobrik's perfume launch. For those who don't know, David Dobrik is one of the most famous YouTuber. He recently launched a perfume. He sent his assistant to go to a celebrity store with a bodyguard, and his assistant handcuffed the suitcase with the perfume in it. It really reminds me of what you said about designing the whole experience. Speaking of creating a great brand and experiences, how do you measure the success? People already have Yelp's brand image in their head. What can be done to go beyond that experiences? I go to Yelp to search how good the food is. Even during the pandemic, I feel like I trust Yelp more than many other apps because it is reviewed by foodies. I focus more on how good something tastes than if the store's geographic location is good or the interior design is good. How do you go beyond the original brand image for Yelp? How do you make the marketing even more effective? What does success looks like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just stated it well, whether intentionally or not. You said you trust Yelp more as a foodie specifically, I think that's, regardless of what I want consumers to think, they're gonna connect with some attribute, and for us, we have really great content, and we've been, we've had a very active community of consumers for 15 years now, contributing really great content that helps other people, and they're not doing it because, people on Yelp don't contribute content because they want to be influencers or YouTube stars, or, using filters on Instagram to show how, good they are at photography or having the best time ever. It's really to help other people. And that inherently means they're going to tell the truth. And like it or not, you're going to get no filter when you go to Yelp. And I think that if I can build on that as a core attribute, we can accomplish anything, because I think that is a very sustaining value proposition. And whether you apply that to restaurants, or, what to look for when you're choosing a plumber, or where to get a haircut, you want to trust. And frankly, COVID, as much as we all hate it and just can't wait to get back to normal, Yelp has proven to be an even bigger utility right now, because what's more important than trusting what you read about whether a business is still open, or, there's proper social distancing measures at wherever that you're going, or health and safety is a top concern, or motivator for that business. And so I think there's a lot for us to capitalize on right now. And I think that our value as a company is only getting stronger. And I know you didn't ask for an advertisement for Yelp just now, but it's just where my mind goes. And I'm proud of the service that we offer, but I'm also excited about bringing that attribute to other places.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting goal to have. I feel like the no filter content is even more important now. Yelp built a really strong brand when it comes to food and local services. It's definitely the first app on my mind to find things around me. Let's go back to the career development journey. You're very successful now as the SVP of Yelp, assuming you probably built many meaningful relationships along the way. Who do you normally talk to and bounce off ideas with when it comes to career decisions?
Yeah, honestly, I've never thought about it very formally. I have friends and colleagues who are experts in something, and I ask them questions. It could be someone in marketing or product or finance, or even like my wife or kids, who just make me see the world differently and ask me questions that often, because they know me better than anybody. And so I want to have questions and mentors in the business, but those people don't really know me, so I tend to rely on personal relationships as well. Early on in my career, I did have some people that I looked up to and learned specific skills, and I can call them out specifically. It wouldn't be that meaningful to say them by name on the podcast, but it was, a boss, my first boss, really taught me the value of speaking clearly and loudly and convincingly in presentations. And it was just one of those early skills that I just admired every time I remember the first client meeting, it was at an agency, and the first client meeting, I was a pretty quiet guy, pretty introverted. And he just owned the room. And what I realized is I went to then the second meeting and the third meeting and the fourth meeting, he had the same exact delivery, and he had clearly practiced. And these things don't happen by accident. Everything is learned and practiced. And sure, you have some natural skills, but in business, you have to really hone them to be excellent. So for me, it was never about a single person I wanted to emulate, but really a number of people, each of whom I learned a key skill from. Presenting was that first one, leading, analyzing, writing. It's almost like a series of professors at a school. You want to surround yourself with people with different skills and pick and choose based on things you want to learn. You probably won't find one person who's going to teach you everything, because everybody's different, and you have different strengths and weaknesses, and you need to apply that in who you choose as your mentors or just people that you talk to.
Absolutely. Do you normally intentionally and strategically meet or hang out with people that have certain characteristics or skills, or do you meet whoever that's around you?
I tend to meet people by happy coincidence, if you believe in coincidences, or maybe things are just meant to be. After reading the Celestine Prophecy when I was a kid, I suppose I never really. I'm now convinced there are no coincidences, but I tend to fall into relationships. Like, I'll just be in a conversation with somebody. I make it a point to talk to everybody, right? I mean, we met because we just, we started talking, and we met because I did another podcast. And that's because I started talking to somebody. And I think that if you put yourself out there, you'll find those connection points, and you'll realize that someone has something that you want to learn from. And it doesn't matter what skill it is. Some people are more scientific about it, right? They'll say, I need to learn this skill and I want to meet someone who does this. That's just never worked for me. I've taken classes and I've done some self-learning that helped me in those regards. But when it comes to meeting people, there's something else that has to be there besides the skill. There has to be a human connection. And you can't be too scientific about that. You just have to connect with someone. And then below the surface, you'll probably find that they have experiences that you can really benefit from, even if it's not on their resume. And every friend of mine and every family member teaches me something new. It's just how I live my life. I think that's how most people who, really adopt learning as like a number one motivator in life are. It's just every experience is a learning opportunity, whether you know it's a learning opportunity or not. It just happens, and you have to embrace that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I personally do believe in serendipity. Even I try to achieve a certain goal, but there is always some unknown to it. I feel like people show up in your life for a reason. You can always learn something from different people.
That's right. I mean, to be honest, like I'm recalling an incident when I was an instance, not an incident. It was earlier in my career, and I was working at an agency, and I was thinking about whether or not I should go to Capital One, which was the one of our largest clients. And I'd always thought maybe I wanted to go to a bigger company and really get deep on a product and deep on a project, as opposed to being at an agency working with a lot of clients. And I couldn't decide. And I had an opportunity at Capital One, but it would have required me to move to Knoxville, Tennessee, which is kind of out of my comfort zone. And I had my wife was pregnant, and it was a big move. We were living in Boston at the time. And I remember sitting by the pool at this resort in the Caribbean. And I was reading a book that I remember it was a business book. I can't remember who it was by, but I remember like reading it because I wanted to like look for something that would help me in my journey. And it turned out there was an older gentleman sitting next to me who had a long career and had made a lot of difficult career decisions. And he had clearly been successful. And he saw that I was reading this book, and we struck up a conversation. And I opened up to him about my very difficult decision about whether I should join Capital One. And he didn't say, you must join Capital One, but he did convince me to make that move. After learning, he just knew the questions to ask, and he convinced me that it was worth the risk. And there are some points in your life where you got to take the leap. And I don't remember his name, and I wouldn't even recognize him if I saw him on the street. But like, that's what I mean by that was not a coincidence. It was the perfect timing. And someone sent us both to that pool in the Caribbean so he could help me out.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. What question did he ask?
I don't even remember. It was so many years ago. He probably asked me questions about why not. Like what is it what are you afraid of? And I was probably like, I don't know, moving all the way to Tennessee. He's like, you're going to look back on that as an experience, and it won't, if anything, it'll be a good thing. You'll gain new perspective. You'll meet new people. And guess what? I did. I lived in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I had the greatest time. I learned a ton. And Capital One was one of the accelerants in my career. So he forced me just to think outside my comfort zone more than anything.
Yeah, totally. What were you doing when you were in your 20s or 30s? I always feel so old when there are 18 years of VCs or founders showing up in the industry. That just really make me feel I'm so behind. On the other hand, I feel like many successful people had diverse set of experiences when they were younger. I feel like a lot of people didn't come straight into the industry, but still are doing really well. So I'm just curious, what's your experience like?
Well, okay. So let me just be totally honest with you. You're looking at like all those 18-year-olds doing all this crazy stuff. I'm looking at you in your late 20s, with an awesome podcast and everything going for you. And I'm like, God, I didn't have my shit together in my late 20s.
But you do now, so
but there are people in their 50s that are looking at me going, wow, like how is that guy doing this at such a young age? I was definitely early. I definitely found early success in my career. I chose a weird path, but I was always in leadership positions, pretty much right out of college, and I never looked back. It was just something I enjoy and embraced, and I do. My late 20s, I was, I met my wife, and so I set out on that journey, and soon after that we got married and had kids, and I was part of the .com boom in my 20s when I graduated college out here in San Francisco, when South of Market was nothing but a bunch of empty warehouses, and it was a different scene. And then I watched that get built, and then it got completely torn down. And then in my mid to late 20s, I moved back to the East Coast, and I focused on building a family. And also in my career, I started working at, some larger companies and establishing myself and really learning skills that I really needed to learn. I needed some more foundational marketing capabilities, and I just hadn't had the experiences that I needed. So I put myself into different situations that were kind of uncomfortable sometimes. I am a big believer in, just getting thrown into the fire. It happened to me. I survived. I've got some burns, but those burns make me stronger and smarter and be able to anticipate things. And people might sometimes hate me for doing it to them, but it makes them stronger. And I know that at some point it will pay back. So I can't remember what I was doing in my late 20s, but I know I was getting married, having my first kid, and I was getting my first senior leadership roles in my early 30s. CoStar Group was the first one, and that was really the thing that trained me the most, not only in marketing, but in leadership.
Speaking of that, curious about what do you look for in a role when it comes to maximizing your career growth?
Yeah, I think I look for problems that I think I can solve. both personally, but also where marketing can play a strategic and not just a supporting role.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a trap, I think, for a lot of marketers is marketing can play second fiddle. Unless the company's founded by marketing, it most often is second fiddle to either product engineering
Mm-hmm.
or to sales. And I think that I look for places where there's that white space to fill in, like I was talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and an openness to exploring new ideas and opportunities. A personal example was my decision to join CoStar Group that I was just talking about, which was probably my biggest career accelerator. I was a digital marketer by trade, and I was looking for a way to become more of a marketing GM. I remember I had a boss before that. He was a COO of a fintech company that I was at earlier in my career. And I remember I was running digital marketing there, and I was really good at like Google and affiliate marketing and email marketing. And I was on top of the world. And I was like, I am the best digital marketer. Back then we called it interactive marketing, but it was a new space. And he looked at me and he's like, man, you're a smart guy, but how are you ever going to like become the person that's actually leading all of marketing? And I was like, well, I hadn't really thought of that. I said, I suppose at some point digital marketing will become the thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm just in the right field. And it, turned out that was true, but it really did make me think about like, I need to put myself in a situation to get the maximum amount of leverage from the skills that I have as a digital marketer. And so I joined CoStar Group, which was a company that I saw a lot of promise for, just digital and e-commerce in general. They were very old school commercial real estate data company, still around, doing very well. And I remember in my first year, I signed up to manage a really, really strategic project that I had no business in signing up for. But I was good at digital marketing, and it was an e-commerce product. And I was like, I'll GM this product. And it took off, and I had no idea what I was doing, but it showed that I was willing to take risks, and I had some strengths in thinking about white space, but also adding some frameworks to it. And when my boss left after a year, I became the CMO, head of marketing, in my early 30s. And that was a huge maximizer to your question for my career growth. I put myself out there. I found leverage in a skill set that I had that I knew I was better at than anybody at the company. And I did not house of cards my boss out. That was more happy coincidence that he decided to leave. But I put myself in a situation where I got called out from the bullpen to take the reins because I had shown that I could operate at that level. And that was a really good way to maximize my opportunity.
Yeah, that sounds like a great transition. Let's recap a little bit. There were essentially 3 steps that you took to transition from a marketer to a leader. You started as a great digital marketer, being good at a particular subject. Step 1 is early on in your career, you really sharpen your skill in the digital marketing domain. Then step 2, you pick a white space. You apply digital marketing when no one sees real estate as a place that needs it. Demonstrate your ability to be a CMO for that product. You build a track record and the skill set. Then step 3, you find an opportunity to scale up the impact. In terms of skill sets, what do you need to learn in that transition?
I definitely needed to learn product marketing. I didn't really know what that was. When you're a digital marketer, you tend to, at least for me, I was focused on the customer acquisition, the mechanics of customer acquisition, both in terms of like the channels that I was buying, and getting click rates, and then also the conversion rate optimization on landing pages and websites, and just that full kind of digital funnel. But I didn't, and I was good at like words, but I didn't really understand how to map, messaging hierarchy to different customer segments, and embracing, more of a customer centric perspective on how to position a company. And I just didn't understand the frameworks for doing that. I think at the end of the day, when I advise companies, a lot of it just comes down to, okay, here's a framework. And if you have this framework, you could just fill in the blanks. And with product marketing, that's especially true. You inherently know this stuff, but it's hard to express sometimes. And it's therefore very difficult to apply at scale. And so I had to learn how to be a better product marketer and how to really analyze customers and apply that in a way that I could not just on the surface improve conversion rates of stuff, but to build products that, actually met the needs of customers and spoke about it in a way that, would make them want to try us out. And that for me, that was a big transition to B2B marketing. That's what B2B marketing is. And consumer marketing, you can get away with, I think, just more surface level messages. And sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. You cannot get away with it in B2B. When I transitioned to CoStar Group, we were a publicly traded company. So I also had to learn how to talk to different stakeholders, not just our customers, but analysts on Wall Street. I was, writing earnings reports and setting guidance for the street and doing road shows. I had to learn how to do a lot of internal messaging. All of a sudden, I was at a company with thousands of people, and I owned internal communications too. So we had to learn what would inspire and motivate employees around a message. I had to learn about how to inspire the press. I had a PR team. And these are all slightly different messages of a core principled set of messages. And I never knew how to do that. These were so new. And I learned by reading, I learned by talking to other people, but mostly I learned by being asked for something and stressing out and racking my brain and sweating and crying a little bit. And then I did it wrong. And then I got it better. And I fortunately was given a chance. And, I lasted for 3 years at CoStar before I voluntarily made the decision to leave. But in that 3-year period, I learned so much. I never got my MBA, but that was my MBA. Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like one of the core differences between CMO and digital marketer is you have to be able to see the big picture, recognize what that company is trying to accomplish. You make the decision to set up KPI for your department and yourself. Let's say we're on the first day at your work as a marketing leader of your company. How do you set up KPI for yourself? And how do you figure out the critical problem you need to solve?
Yeah, I think it really, for me, it's start with the top. What's the company's objectives? What you need some crisp objectives. That's hard for early stage startups. They're not always crisp. This definitely becomes easier when you're at a little bit more of an established company and you have a couple years of historical baseline data behind you, and you know what kind of incremental improvement you want to see in the next year, or what's the big thing you want to do. My process is start there and then say, okay, what could marketing contribute to that in a measurable way? What could we drive? What could we influence? And what do we need to support? And then I say, okay, well, let's pick some stretch goals. It could be a performance marketing, customer acquisition stuff. It could be product marketing, retention or LTV stuff. It could be, just a channel like email marketing. I need to get this many clicks in order to achieve this, or demand gen. And then I go through a process where I say, do we have what it takes to hit those goals? What skills do we have where I'm confident, and what skills are we lacking that I need to hire for or make up for? And then I go through a process where I say, I feel confident. Let's go red, yellow, green. Green is I'm super confident we can hit that. Yellow is I don't think we're going to get there. And red is there's just no way. Unless we invest in this, we don't have the people, we don't have the skills, and we got to make investments soon. And let's put that down as a dependency in our path to actually getting there. And then it becomes fairly scientific. It's a lot of squishy math, but you can start to make sense of do I have the tools in place? If not, are we willing to invest? If not, I can then have an honest conversation with the CEO, with the board, with the CFO about what we can sign up for realistically. Now, that's a really good process at a big company and even a mid-sized company. At an early stage company, you got to kind of play it more as you go. You lay things out for the year, but then you have to adjust every month. It gets a little bit harder, but you have more utility players. So you would hopefully have a few people on the team that could adapt and move to different things and multitask. But like, you just have to be honest with yourself about what you can do and what your team can do and about the budget that you have, and then apply it to the goals and just be honest, because you will have a far better experience if you're honest up front than if you try to overpromise and underdeliver.
I feel like one thing in marketing I find really challenging is measuring the results. Other departments like sales, people can judge by sales quota, and they will be measured by if they can hit a certain number. For marketing, besides social following goals, how does a company measure things like brand awareness? How do you measure the conversion and retention rate when you have multiple marketing channels? How do you measure which marketing channel works the best? I also feel like there are so many brands on the internet that are becoming really well known through marketing, but are they actually able to convert into sales?
Yeah. So in other words, how do you connect the dots between things that aren't as measurable with the ultimate success of an initiative, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's not easy. I mean, the reality with goal setting and measurement is that sometimes we're in like sole control of hitting goals, though that's pretty rare, honestly. I don't have many examples of these. Sometimes you're in the driver's seat and you have close collaborators who are really necessary and are major dependencies. Like, think about marketing depending on engineering to do something. And this is most often the case. Examples at Yelp are like performance marketing or lifecycle marketing or, very direct channels. Mm-hmm. And other times we're influencers or supporters of someone else's work. And this is really just harder to measure because we may not be the accountable party. So we need to figure out what marketing is responsible for and how we can hold ourselves accountable for our piece of the puzzle. And that's the hardest part about measurement and demonstrating success when it's a level below the surface. The success or failure is measured in different ways. Examples are like, merchandising strategy or product marketing or messaging or copywriting. Like, how do you isolate those factors when it's one element of a major company initiative? What I tend to do is I pick like low level metrics as I can that would be proxies for whether or not the things that we're doing are the things that would contribute to success. It's not so much a top down, like, were we successful? Okay, now let's break them down. It's more of a bottoms up, like, let's make sure we have an integrated approach to any of these really big kind of ideas, whether it's brand or product launch or whatever. And now what is each team signing up for? And how do we all hold ourselves accountable for the top level goal? But what are we each signed up for at like one layer down? So, for instance, if the goal is to sell $10 million of a certain product, right? Marketing may have responsibility for the pricing strategy. It may have responsibility for the messaging of that product in all different channels. And it might have responsibility for the marketing channels that we market this stuff, but we're not responsible for the product itself. So we're going to sign up for, what's the velocity of customer acquisition and what's our cost per acquisition. In, merchandising and pricing, we're going to measure, what's our average contract value or what's the average sale price. Or we're going to, measure profit margin. How well are we acquiring customers? What's our CAC to LTV ratio is the one that we use internally. So how much are we spending versus how much are we making? And can we make sense of that? So I think it's just breaking down the challenge and the bigger company goal into little bits and pieces that we can control. Mm-hmm. And when you add it up, it works itself out, but everybody has to be accountable for something.
I totally agree with the bottom-up approach. You've worked at so many different companies who sell different products. For example, Eventbrite and Yelp have very different products. Curious, what are the differences and similarities when it comes to marketing and leadership in different products and industries? What have you learned on this journey?
Yeah, I would say I literally learned an important lesson at every stop on the journey. Some things are just reinforced over and over again, and hopefully I don't make the same mistakes more than 8 times. But I learn an important lesson at every stop. For me, it's less about the industry. As you can see, I've jumped around to a lot of different industries. I find that fascinating. Mm-hmm. It's more about the business model, the customers, and then the stage of the product market fit. Mm-hmm. So taking you maybe through a few of those, at Grand Rounds, which is a great healthcare company doing great things for the world. I love that I learned. I learned that I love a mission-driven business. It just, it makes it all worth it. It makes solving the problems that much more meaningful, and it adds a sense of urgency. But what I also learned is that I don't really want to be head of marketing at a company that only focuses on closing big deals, because I felt like I didn't have a lot of accountability for the things that mattered most to the company. It was usually fell on the shoulders of a really good salesperson. Mm-hmm. And I never felt great about that. I never had a great sense of self-satisfaction. So I promised myself after Grand Rounds, I would never go to another company that only succeeded based on the efforts of a small number of salespeople. At this moment, I learned that I'm always going to trip up on that. I learned that I love being a marketer who gets to market to other marketers. We were a content marketing platform, and I got to be the customer. I got to go out and talk very honestly about how much it's the way Salesforce markets themselves. They are the best user. They eat their own dog food. They are the biggest proponents. You see how successful they are, and then they say it's because we use Salesforce so well. And it's impossible to not want to use Salesforce at that point. So I loved being the expert on day one at the value prop at this moment. But what I learned the hard way is that we really lacked product market fit. Mm-hmm. We were far too services heavy, so it was really difficult to scale. At Eventbrite, I really found my groove for two-sided marketplaces and self-serve acquisition models. I went from supporting just big deals at Grand Rounds to a place where, 65, 70% of the new customers came in through the website, which marketing owned. And so all of a sudden I had a number, and I could use all the growth hacking and growth marketing skills that I had developed as a consumer marketer for a long time. But I also learned some hard lessons there. I had teams in 8 different countries, and there are some real challenges with that, not just the practicality of trying to do an all hands meeting with a team in Melbourne, Australia at the same time as someone in Mendoza, Argentina, which is practically impossible because of time zones, language barriers, but also you're literally running 8 different businesses with very different challenges in every single country. And that was just really hard. I would do it again, but I would do it differently. And now at Yelp, where I've been for 2.5 years and really loving it, it's confirmed my love for marketplaces, and we're operating on both sides. And it's just fun being able to operate across 2 different audiences, consumers and businesses, but also finding really interesting methods to address both together. But, I'm experiencing new challenges. Yelp is an amazing consumer brand, but we've got a bit of a fractious relationship with small business owners. And I'm dealing with, how to manage through a difficult reputation and the implications that has for how far a marketing dollar can go when your LTVs are cut short. So I am literally learning something at every company I go to, and I guarantee you I will continue to learn something new at every company until I hang up my shoes. And that's what makes it so fun, you know?
Yeah, I really like your honesty about each challenges different companies are facing. I've got career advice from mentors who mention you need to pick a place that have great track record of your subject matters. For example, you need to go to a company that really prioritizes marketing to be in their marketing department. Or if you are a salesperson, you need to go to a company with a great product so you can build a great track record for selling it. Or some people suggest that you need to go to a place you can solve their problem. From your answer, it's kind of both. Overall, I really learned a lot from what you have shared. Speaking of building a good track record, your LinkedIn profile is really perfectly done. You translate your professional experiences into business languages. For us who just started our career not long ago, how should we communicate what we have accomplished each step of the way?
Yeah. So I think you said it well. I think, first of all, present yourself as results driven. That's really it. That's the primary filter. When I'm looking for people to join my team, and when I talk to others who I admire, it's just be results driven. Use numbers, but don't just use the numbers. Tell everyone how what you did contributed to the success of the bigger company goals. Mm-hmm. It was just like I talked about how you set KPIs. Make the connection for people about how what you drove business results, and make sense of it for people, because otherwise they won't understand. Mm-hmm. And if you want to take it a step further, tell people about the challenges that you encountered along the way and how you overcame them. That is rare on LinkedIn. And it's perhaps the biggest weakness of LinkedIn. Honestly, it's all gloss. It's mm-hmm. all gloss. But that's the stuff that shows what someone is really made of, right? Like, mm-hmm. tell me about how you took a difficult situation and you made it better. Tell me about a personal challenge you had along the way and what you learned to overcome that. I'm personally not doing that very well, honestly, but I am telling a story about my career development, and each part of the journey is another way for a recruiter or a potential partner to see the value in connecting with me, right? So mm-hmm. like, give people moments and opportunities. Don't make it repetitive. If you've done the same thing at every company, whether it's 2 companies or 5 companies, find a different way to tell that story, because mm-hmm. you never know how someone's going to connect with you. If it's just numbers and numbers and numbers and numbers, guess what someone's going to think of you? They're going to think you're a quant, and that's a mm-hmm. good role for a company to have. It's not necessarily the leadership role. It's not necessarily the role that's going to open up all the possibilities. So in addition to the quantitative stuff, talk about what it meant and talk about what you mm-hmm. accomplished for the company in a more strategic way.
Wow, I've never thought about what putting numbers on my resume means. That's super well said. When you are looking for leadership roles, it's good to show your EQ in some way. You're currently on the board of some companies. Curious, what does being on a board means to you? What are some common things startups need your help with?
I mean, first of all, I love working with younger startups. Doesn't necessarily mean younger founders. Honestly, mm-hmm. It doesn't matter the age. It's more just the age of the company itself and where they are in their path. But I love it. I really do. It's also my chance to like work at bigger companies and have a little bit of a different risk profile than, working with younger companies, where I get to appreciate some of the challenges. Frankly, there's no one lesson. Every startup is different and has a different path. And I know that's the worst answer, but it really, for me, it comes down to the strengths of the founders and the teams, and where they have strengths and where they have gaps. And what I've learned more than anything else is that a big strength in any one area can really catapult one startup to success and really outperform the competition in ways that I hadn't anticipated. And I need to adapt my guidance and where I lean in based on that. For instance, I have, I advise a number of startups, but I'm thinking about 2 in particular that are very different. One is a bootstrapped, highly technical company in the Salesforce App Exchange ecosystem. And they've got the technical stuff in spades, but they don't really embrace brand and they don't understand how to appear bigger than they actually are so they can compete with some very well-established players in the space. And so I have helped them a lot on that. I mean, whether, literally logo development that we got done through 99 Designs, it's great. Or, building a killer website, getting a social presence, thought leadership content, newsletters, just the things that establish you as a brand. And that's catapulted them. They've got the technical stuff done. On the other side, I'm working with another startup that's in the fintech space, and they are amazing at brand. The founder is a visionary, and he can weave a story together and convince the CEO of a Fortune 200 to buy whatever he's selling them. But I think technically they need a lot of help in like the frameworks to figure out who their customers are and technically how they serve their needs and how to describe that in a way where it makes sense to them because they're not a technical buyer. So it really, you can't apply one playbook to any one company. You just have to recognize the strengths of a founder and their teams. And then you have to fill in the gaps. And there's going to be gaps. You just have to work with founders that can acknowledge that and are willing to work on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. We're at the last part of the interview, which is like 1 minute fire round for you. So first question is, what's your favorite book?
My favorite book. Oh boy. My favorite book is probably, it's pretty much any Hemingway book. I used to be a huge fan because I traveled a lot throughout Spain and France, and Sun Also Rises. I was literally reading it when I was in Pamplona, and he was talking about his experience there and running with the bulls and waking up to the sunrise in San Sebastian. And I was literally on the beach in San Sebastian drinking wine at sunset, reading that. And I'd say that one's probably affected me emotionally the most in my life.
Nice. Who made the biggest impact in your career?
My wife. She's always been, she challenges me, but she's also my voice of reason.
Oh, that's sweet. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Who would I invite to my dinner party? Wow. I assume you mean like celebrities or other people that I don't know personally, or can it be like my family?
All of them. It's your party.
All of them. Yeah. I mean, oh boy. I'd love to have like Dave Grohl there so he could give us a little bit of a performance after we're done eating. Probably Bobby Flay. So he could actually cook the food. But I think he's great. I know he's a little bit of a showboat, but I just think it's hilarious. Beat Bobby Flay is such a good show. And then I would say probably like Malcolm Gladwell, because I think that he would just like throw out really interesting ways of looking at the world and create just amazing conversation. And then my family too, because that would be fun.
Yeah, for sure. So where can we find you outside of work?
You can find me on Mount Tam mountain biking. I live up in Marin County. You could find me at Squaw Valley skiing. You could find me binge watching something on any number of streaming services that I now have adopted throughout this pandemic. Or you could find me, I have 2 dogs, so playing with my 2 pups at some park or beach.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Smart Venture Podcast. If you like it, please leave us a quick review and hit subscribe so you don't miss any tips from the experts. If you want to receive our updates, please leave your email at smartventurepod.com. If you want to connect with me, all my socials are at Grace Gong GG. Besides LinkedIn, it's just Grace Gong. I'd love to connect with you and let me know your thought about the show. Now you can also listen to Smart Venture Podcast on YouTube. Go to smartventurepod.com, click the YouTube link on the top banner. Don't forget to hit subscribe and smash the like button. See you next time.